Hello everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I was a bit horrified when I saw all the really big names on at the same time as me. But it's fantastic to see so many people, so thank you very much for coming. My name is Johanna Stirling and I'm a teacher and a teacher trainer. I work at NILE, Norwich Institute for Language Education, and I also work for Cambridge University Press, both as an author and mainly nowadays as a presenter. And I do other things as well. Okay, so what we're going to look at today, sorry, I must just go back in case you haven't seen this. All the talks are being recorded today. Okay, so if you don't want to be on camera, it's good to stay right at the side and keep your head down. Yeah? No, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Your face won't be on unless you come out the front. So what I'm talking about today is ways that we can make low-level literacy learning, especially for EAP students, but not only for EAP. How we can make it achievable, engaging and sustainable. Okay, so I'm starting with a little bit of a problem because the projector here has bleached out some of my image. So this doesn't actually make sense. But what you should be able to see here is these letters, and then these are in grey, the same letters. It's where they have to trace over the letters, okay? So you need a little bit of visualization there, okay? But it's not too important at the moment. What I wanted to show was that students who are doing English for academic purposes, and they're at a very low level, and we're talking here about pre-A1. I'm going to be looking at pre-A1, A1, A2. Okay, so we're talking low-level students. But what a long journey they've got. If you think of this, where they're first learning perhaps to write the letters, and this long, long journey until perhaps their dissertation, their master's dissertation, or in some cases, PhD dissertations. Don't you agree that that's a really long journey for them to have to make? And so what I want to look at is how we can keep them motivated, so we can make it engaging, how we can make it achievable, because they're going to have to deal with very complex language, complex text, complex words, eventually. Okay, obviously not at pre-A1 level, but they will have to, and we need to start to prepare them for that. And what I think is really important is making the learning sustainable. Now, what do I mean by sustainable? I mean that when they do something, their aim is not just to complete the exercise correctly, or to do a test correctly, or read a text and be able to fill in the comprehension questions. Their learning needs to be learning that will help them on this very, very long journey. Okay, so that's what we'll be looking at today. Okay, so I'm just going to focus on writing, not reading, in terms of literacy. And I think that we can divide literacy up into smaller blocks to larger blocks. So just starting with letters, that they can form letters, etc. Then moving on to words, which is mainly about spelling, then sentences, and then text, putting sentences together to make text. I'm not going to deal with text today. There's not enough time, but I'm hoping we'll have time to look at letters, words, and sentences. There are a few seats down here if anybody wants to come in. This is a good time to do it. Okay, so let's start off by looking at letters. So here we're talking about students who have got who lack basic literacy in English. Possibly they're literate in their own language, or possibly not. Mind you, that is an extremely long journey if they're not I think unlikely. If they're going to do EAP, I think it's unlikely that they wouldn't be literate in their own language. So let's have a look at what happens if students are not comfortable with the letters, with using letters in English. Have a look at these sentences here, and let's just identify what the problem is. What do you think about this first one? Every country needs... Doctors. It should be doctors, yeah. Why do you think somebody has made that mistake?
He confuses B and D.
Yeah, why? Why confuses B and D? Exactly, they're what we call mirror letters, okay? They remember that there's a stick and a ball, but they can't remember which side the ball goes on, yeah? So have you seen this with your students maybe, where they've mixed that? So they've got to know how to form the letters. What do you think the problem is here? The city has many barks. Yes, okay, it should be parks. Yeah. Now, it could be the same sort of thing, the same sort of problem. But actually, I think here, this is about them hearing the sound. A lot of the learners I've worked with, their first language is Arabic, and they can't hear the difference between B and P. And so they don't know which one to use. Okay, so it's also a problem of identifying the sound and fitting it with the right letter. What about number 3? What's the problem there? Yeah, capitals. I mean, it might be that they just don't know where to use capitals, but also, sorry, this was the best I could do while typing it. Sometimes they don't know how to form the capitals. Maybe they've only learnt the lowercase or the other way round. So they need that as well. Now, number 4, if you notice here, the W and the R are the wrong way round. And what I'd like you to do, can you all take out your finger pen, please? Yeah, okay. And can you just write in the air, WR, joined up. So WR. Yeah? Okay? And that flows, doesn't it? WR. Now, what happens if you start writing the W here? Yeah, you have to, I'll go this way. You do your W, and then you have to go back here to do the R. Okay? So it's actually very important that students know where to start writing the letters. And I find, again, with a lot of people who come from languages that are written from right to left, that they often start the letters in the wrong place, and then they don't get that flow. Okay? And then you get mistakes like this. And what's the problem in the last one? No spaces. And I like to think of spaces as a type of letter. If you think of spaces as a letter, and here they just haven't got the spaces in there. Okay. So, I think it's really important as teachers that we understand the difficulties. And so, that's come out wrong, but it's right on your on your handout. I don't know why it's done that, but on your handout you'll see this diagram, but yours is much prettier than this. And what I'd like you to do is, can you find, you've got a symbol, except these are pretty pictures. You've got a symbol here. Can you find 2 symbols in each line that are the same as these? Okay, just have a look. See if you can circle 2 symbols in the same line that are the same as the one at the beginning. Okay. Have you done it? Yeah, all right. I'm not going to check your answers, actually, partly because mine has changed anyway. But it's not quite as easy as it looks, is it? You have to look quite carefully, and you think something is the same, and then you think, oh no, it's not quite the same. And also, on the first line that you've got, I made the first one bold, and it looks a little bit different when it's not bold. So let's see how that translates to activities for learners. I'm going to show you some examples from Unlock. This is from Unlock Basic Literacy. So here you can see that they see the letter P, and then they have to circle the other P's. So this helps them to distinguish between those similar letters. Okay, or a similar one here where they just have to match them. And they need quite a lot of this kind of practice. And I think this is an interesting one. One thing here, what's the difference between the target language, if you like, here and here? Sorry?
These are just letters, but the other one has words in it.
True, yes, it's about words, and also these are capitals. So we need to deal with capitals as well. So you can see there, they have to find the letters for exit. Okay, here you have to find the G and the O, etc. Okay, I like that because it's starting to be more contextualized as well. And then really important is that they can match the capitals with the lowercase letters. Okay. So we've only got time to just touch on each of these. So we've looked at letters. You all know how to teach that now. And so we're going to move on to words. This is, we'll spend a bit longer on this, partly because this is my subject. I'm very interested in teaching spelling. And so I don't mean to say this is about me, not about you, but it's where I feel my strengths are. Okay. If we think about languages, languages vary in the writing systems of languages vary a lot according to how strong the correlation is between the sound and the spelling. Okay, so if we take languages like Finnish and Italian, and quite possibly your own language, I don't know, really they are very, very phonemically spelt. Okay, so I think if you say to a Finnish person, if a Finnish person heard a new word, they could spell it immediately with 100% confidence. Any Finns in here? No? Oh, good, so nobody can contradict me. That's okay. All right, and the same in Italian. Whereas at the other end, this is actually an ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic. Yeah. What do you think the word is? I. Yeah, it's an I. Okay. And there is nothing to do with sound. It's all to do with pictures for meaning. Okay. So, what would you say about English? Where would you put English on that line? Is it related at all to sound? Yes, it is. It's actually about 50%. About 50% of English words are spelt according to their sound, okay? But 50% aren't. There are other things that come into play. What about, so I would say we're around here, okay, for English. What about for your own language?
Turkish is kind of up about, it's close to where Finnish is.
Is it? Right, yeah, okay.
Spanish.
Spanish, yeah. not quite as much as Italian, is it? I think I could give you examples where it isn't. The things like the but and the. Maybe, yeah. Okay. Anyway, so interesting to think about with your own language and to draw parallels for your learners. So, what happens if we don't teach spelling at this level, at this basic level, and don't help them enough? This is some writing, only slightly adapted, from a student of mine who was actually in a B2 class. Okay? You know, the sentence structure's not bad, the grammar's not bad, but it's complete, and the ideas are okay. It's completely let down by the spelling. Yeah? And that's what happens if we don't deal with this at the beginning. Okay. So there are different things we can do. And one of them, I think, because we're talking about academic students, they might not be very academic at the moment, but we need to move them in that direction, or maybe they are. We have to assume that they have the cognitive powers, yeah, to work things out for themselves. And so I like to work on this and to get them to make links between things, because this is how we can make more sustainable learning. If they understand the English spelling, they're much more likely to remember it. Okay, so you have, if you're at the end of any row, and sometimes in the middle, you should find two little packets of words. Could you, if you are, could you find the orange ones, please? Everybody who's at an end, either the middle or the far end, you should have one. And some people in the middle. Okay, and it's the orange ones, not the black ones. Okay, and could you open up that little present? Okay, and you've got these words. And what I'd like you to do, can you get together with some other people near you so everybody can see them? And could you try to put them into 4 groups? Okay, now be careful. The groups are related to the meaning and the spelling. Forget the pronunciation. It's not about pronunciation, just the meaning and the spelling. See if you can put them into 4 groups. Has everybody got some words?
Thank you very much.
Don't know where yours went. Okay. Have you got a set? Have you got some? Oh, you've got some down there, haven't you? Have you got orange ones? Yeah. The orange ones, yeah.
If you resign.
So you need 4 groups, yeah? And each group is about the spelling and the meaning, but not about the pronunciation. Have you got 4 groups?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
That's TW.
We thought noun, adjective,
Oh, okay.
adverb.
Think more about the meaning of the individual words. Yeah. All right, let's have a look. Did you find 4 groups? Okay. I'm going to have to show you, it's what PowerPoint does to you. I can't elicit. So, yeah. So, have you got these groups? So, to, twice, and between. Yeah? Now, in terms of spelling, what have they got in common? They all contain TW. And what about in terms of meaning?
Oh, 2 things.
They're all related to the number 2, aren't they? And I often get, I don't know how many of you teach Arabic speakers with first language Arabic, but it's a really weird thing. You very rarely see that. You always see TWO. Always spell it TWO. And they often say to me, but why is there a W? Why is there a W? You don't say TWO, you say two. And I thought, good question. And so when I did some research, I realized that the pronunciation of the word has changed, but the spelling has stayed the same. So that really helps them to see why it's TWO. Because it's just like twice, 20, 12, all of those words related to 2. Even twist 2 things. Okay, and then we've got signature, design, and resign. What's the same in terms of spelling? Sign. They've all got sign in it. Is the pronunciation the same? No, because you've got signature, but design and resign. Okay. And what have they got in common in meaning? Sign, really. Yes, they're all something something quite formal and something about something written, aren't they? Yeah. Okay. And then what about the next 3? What have they got in common in terms of spelling? VAL. And what do you think the VAL means?
Value.
Exactly, value. It's all about value. So interval, inter is between. So if you think about the interval at the theatre, you've got, it's the bit between the valuable bits. Yeah? Invalid, so the in makes it negative, so it's invalid, it doesn't have value. Okay? Or evaluate, obviously. Okay, this would be at a higher level. Obviously, we're not doing this at pre-A1, okay? But maybe by the time you get to kind of B1-ish, some of those, I think this we can do at A1, okay? And we'll come to this one as well, but the others a bit later. But my point is, if they understand why, and they can make these links, learning becomes much more sustainable. What about the last ones? Yeah, what have they got in common? HERE, haven't they? And they're all about place. Now, nobody ever told me that when I was at school or helped me to see it, and it would have made life easier. I would have not had problems between there and the possessive there. Okay. Is that something you think you could do with your learners? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay. I just need to go back a minute. Another cognitive strategy we can use is helping learners with long words. I did some research with my learners about what they found difficult in spelling, and what most of them said was two things that they saw as really difficult were double letters. I don't know when to write double letters. And long words. A lot of them said, I can't do the long words. Now, in EAP, you've got a lot of long words, okay? And they might not be learning these long words, but they need to understand how the words are built. So to help my learners, I break them up. I break the words up. Okay, it's not rocket science, but let's just have a look at that. For this, I need a few volunteers, and I will admit I have already primed a few people, only because they needed to be people who would agree to be filmed. So I need five of the people who I've asked. Okay. Oh, look at that. God, that's fantastic. I think, that's how you do it. Okay, you tell them beforehand. Lovely. Okay, I'm going to give each of these people a piece of paper. Okay, that's for you, for you. One for you, one for you, one for you. Okay, so is it a sentence? Which one is different? Why? It's a prefix, yeah? So it's a prefix. So Phil, you're going to be the one who does the walking, but not yet. But these guys, you have the easy job, okay? These guys have the difficult job, okay? I want you to, this is Phil at the end, say hello to Phil, and I want you to tell Phil where he has to stand. Okay, so first, we want to make a word that means it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay, great. So Phil, if you... Yeah? Okay, and yeah, that's great, yes. Can you join them up? Okay, and so now everybody can see the word unimportant. Okay, you see the N of un. Is it one N or two? Just one. Okay, that's fine. That might seem a daft question, but we'll come back to it later. All right, next word, sad. Okay. How many N's there? One. Just the one. Okay. You don't need it. How many N's? Two. Two. Why? Why are there two? Because necessary starts with an N. Okay, and we'll just do synthetic, not a pre-A1 word, obviously, but synthetic. Unnatural, okay. And how many N's? Two. Okay. And so if we just, you guys can relax, you can't, okay? Yeah, so if we look at this, it's a very easy question for you, how many N's? But I find often my students don't realise that, you know, they say, I can never remember how many N's in it. They don't need to remember. They only need to remember that it's U-N, and if the word starts with the same letter, then they have a double N. Okay, it's not rocket science, and you're probably all thinking, yeah, but I think we need to be really explicit about things like this. Once we get onto suffixes, it's a little bit more complicated, but it's still very teachable, actually. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to all those lovely volunteers, especially Phil, who did the moving. Thank you. Okay. And we can do something similar with miss. Well, we can do it with any prefixes, because prefixes go onto the whole word. So misspell will have a double S because it starts with S. Okay. Also, using their brain, something I've started doing a lot more recently is asking my students questions about spelling. So getting them to make their own links. So they've looked at, so we've looked at the spelling of a word, and I say to them, can you think of another word that's similar? So maybe we've had the word design, and they say, oh, is it like sign? Is it like resign? Okay. Or maybe sometimes they come out with crazy stuff. You know, they think of some kind of link that I haven't thought of. And that's great, because then they'll really remember it. Okay. And I like to ask them, well, let's go to this other orange one here. So why do you think we spell it like this? Okay, and they might say that's how it sounds. They might say it's similar to another word. They might talk about the prefixes and suffixes. But I think it's really important for them to think about why, especially with these longer words. And how are you going to remember? And at first, when I ask students this word, I don't know, or they say, I'll just write it lots of times. Do you think that's an effective way to learn? It's very short term, often, if they're just doing that. Did you have a question?
I have a question, like, if they relate to a word related to their own mother tongue, do you think that's a problem?
Okay, so the question was, if it's a word that's related to their mother tongue, is that a problem? I don't think so, no. I think it would be, it's crazy not to, really. I think, you know, if you've got a word that's very similar to your mother tongue.
With a different meaning.
Oh, with a different meaning, then as long as they, sometimes when it's different, the difference helps you to remember. Yeah? I mean, we're talking about adults here, or certainly well on their way to being adults if they're doing EAP. And I think they ought to be able to make those links, yeah. Okay. So we were saying English is only about 50% phonetic, but sometimes even when a word is phonetic, it's not phonetic to our learners. And I wanted to just tell you a little story of somebody was trying to teach me some Serbian. Anybody Serbian here? Or other Slavic languages? Yeah, okay. Well, forgive me for this, but and she said, yeah, we've got these two sounds that English people find really difficult. And she said, one is ch, and the other is ch. And I was, sure, yeah. And then I was thinking about this the other day, and I found this explanation. So there's ch, like the sound in cheese, and there's ch, like the sound in church. Well, to me, they are identical. And she was giving me these exercises, and I suppose I got about 50% right. She was like, "You're doing really well." And I thought, I cannot hear any difference in these sounds. And I'm sure it's the same in a lot of other languages. So sometimes we need to use visual strategies as well. And something I've found very successful with a lot of students is getting them to draw around the edge of the word. We know from research that people who are good spellers can visualize words. They can see words in their head. Weaker spellers find that difficult. And so this really helps them to do it. For some students, it's been remarkably successful. You can also, using rods, or anything like that, you can get them to build the shape of words. Now, I have another problem on this slide in that you can't actually see the most important part of this because it's been bleached out by the light. But what we've got here are little blocks, little grey blocks around each letter. And if they're the tall letters, it's a big block. And if it's a small letter, it's a small block. The people who are watching on the video, you'll have no problem. It's just the people here can't really see. And so that's a way to help people to see the shape of the words. And so what they do is they look at the whole word, then they cover that, and then they've already got the WH, and then they've got a small block and a big block, and they have to write the AT. Then they cover that as well, and they have to write most of the word. And that really reinforces it. And then you'll see that they put it into context, because there's no point them learning the spelling if they don't know the meaning. Okay, if you want to make those word shapes yourself, the link is on your handout. Okay, it's a great little website, a web tool, where you can make your own word shapes. I love it. It's free. Okay, there are certain words that our students need to learn. They're often called sight words. They're words that sometimes the spelling is not very easy, but they're so common that without them, really their difficulty should be with the long, more academic words. So they need to have these. I'm going to skip over that, I'm afraid, because I just want to get onto sentences. Let's have a look at what can go wrong if they haven't learnt enough about sentences. What's the problem in the first one? No verb. Very common again with Arabic learners. Sorry, a lot of my work has been with Arab learners. She go to university? It's the agreement, isn't it, with the subject and verb. My country is hot and sunny and dry and windy. Yeah, and. So need to construct sentences in a more sophisticated way. Next one. The capitals, yeah, and punctuation. Next one. Word order. And the last one. Yeah, is relative clauses again. Can be a big problem. So, I think again, something I used to find really frustrating was that I couldn't find many materials that actually dealt with that very, very basic subject-verb. They've got to know that a basic English sentence has a subject-verb. After that, it gets a bit more complicated because we can have adjectives, complements, objects, etc. But they've got to get that subject-verb. And so we can do something like this, where they go through and they circle all the verbs, and then they underline the subjects. Okay, so they need to do all that. They've got to get that fixed, that idea of subject and verb. Okay, and so I like to use colours for this because I think colours make things easier and more memorable as well. It doesn't matter what colours you use, but you have to be consistent with the colours. Okay, so if here we take the what's that, turquoise and orange. Okay, and so we're going to have a look at a little activity here. Okay, here I've got some words, and these words are the black ones in the black bag. No, not the black bag, the black words in the bag. They're also on there, but you need the cutout. You need the little cutout ones, really. Okay, and what I want you to do now is see how many sentences you can make, but you actually sorry, I've given mine away, but you actually put your words on the subject and the verb and then the other. Okay, and you should also write them down. We haven't got much time, just a couple of minutes. See how many sentences you can make.
This is great.
Can you say I am assigned to be grade student with an adjective? My subject is
That's too complex.
Okay, I know you'd like to play for longer, but let's stop there. But just to give you an idea, what did you notice, for example, about the subjects?
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a personal pronoun.
It doesn't have to be a personal pronoun. And is it always just one word? No, very often it's more than one word. So it helps us to get this idea across that the subject can actually be a phrase. It can actually be really long. It's really important. I think we're making this more, just going back to the engaging and achievable and sustainable, we're making it more engaging by making it multisensory. Okay, they're actually moving things around. We're making it more achievable because they haven't got to think at this stage about writing the words. Yeah, so we're freeing up a bit of cognitive bandwidth, yeah, to think about the sentences. And it's sustainable because they remember that pattern. Okay, and what can we do after that? We can get them to work on capitals and punctuation on their sentences, because they'll have a list of sentences. We can get them to change them so they're more personalised. They can make the subjects longer, or they can make the verbs longer, okay, but keeping the same structure. And we can get them to translate into their own language and then translate back word for word, and then they see the differences between the sentence structures. Okay, in my last 2 minutes, what I'd like you to just do is just think of maybe not 3 things, maybe only 1, but something that you're taking away from this session. I don't mean taking away your little bag with you, but something that you're taking away in your head from this session. So I'll just let you think for a second. And could anybody tell me a little bit of feedback for me, please? Something that you're taking back from this session, something that you think you'll remember. If nobody says anything, I'm going to be really depressed. Yes?
I think the students have to really walk before they can run. They have to learn the raw basics. They have to really take it back to basics.
Yeah. They definitely need the basics, because if we don't get that right, they are going to pay for it later. Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah.
I think we quite often make assumptions about what students can do because of their academic level in their own language. And often those assumptions, I mean, it's the classic assume makes an ass out of you and me, because sometimes you assume things and then basically you're going at a speed which is too fast for a student.
Yeah.
Slow things down, you have to work out what students are actually capable of doing.
Okay, so that was that. I'll just repeat it so everyone can hear. So we make assumptions about what students can do. We think about their academic level, but as you saw that little exercise where you had to match the symbols, it's not always that easy. And you know, learning especially when it's a complete new script, can be really difficult. Thank you very much. Yes. Oh, good. Okay, thank you. So the lady here was saying that the activity is very adaptable to her class. That's great to know.
They're also very adaptable to online teaching, where you can drag and drop the various items.
Ah, interesting point. So also very adaptable to online teaching, so you can make drag and drop exercises. Yeah, definitely. For those sentences and for the letters.
Online sessions where people drag and drop and then discuss and use a chat box to share longer sentences.
Great. Yeah, so can also make longer sentences if it's online as well in chat boxes. Anything, yeah, from this side?
I think scaffolding is very important for teaching low-level students. You start from the easy one.
Right, so the scaffolding is really important. Yeah, we've always, you know, they've got this, not only have they got this long journey, but it's hard. It's just as hard as it is when you're at a higher level. It's hard for the level that you're at. And so we do need this scaffolding to help them. I think one of the things I noticed with spelling is if you look online at spelling activities, almost all of them are just testing. They're not teaching, they're just testing. And we have to move away from that to actually teaching, giving them sustainable strategies. rather than just constantly testing, and some poor students then just constantly fail, and we want them to constantly succeed. Just one more, yes, thank you.
I just think that is the sentence one, and I think it's very good for English native speakers with dyslexia.
So
Visual.
the lady here was saying also very good for native speakers with dyslexia, and actually a lot of my research when I was building my ideas about spelling come from work with dyslexic students as well. Okay, I have to finish there, if not I get things flashed at me all the time. Thank you so much for coming when there were all those big names you could have gone to see, and thank you. And thank you very much for participating as well. My details are there, but I should just also tell you, you can see Cambridge on stand 50, and you can get 20% off titles at those shops.